Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our live webinar today. We have some really great information for you on the instructional design using Hyperdocs. Tanya Avrith is our Adobe evangelist, and we're so excited that she's been able to come and join us for some of these webinars. So she has a fabulous presentation here just to give us some ideas on using Hyperdocs in your remote instruction. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things before she takes over. We have a chat over to the right of the screen. So please feel free to put some ideas in that you might have or questions that you might have. We have moderators who are monitoring the chat, and you'll know they're moderators. You'll know that they're moderators because they have a little wrench by their name. So there's a 20-second delay between what we're saying and your chat. So rest assured, we have a lot of people there who can interact with you in the chat box. This is being recorded, and the recording will be found on our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to below. We're over 100,000 users now, so we're really excited about that. And we also will have this on our website, edtechtraining.palmbeachschools.org, under live stream resources. You'll be able to view Tanya's slide deck there and all of the wonderful extra handouts and guides and lesson planning tips that she will have along the way. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over so she can talk to you, and then I'll come back at the end to talk to you about some other fun webinars that we have coming up.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thank you for having me back. I am excited also to share with you the exciting world of Hyperdocs. I'm going to explain what a Hyperdoc is in just a moment. But before I begin, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Tanya Avrith, as Tasha mentioned, and I want you to feel free to reach out to me if you ever have any questions. I actually met with a Palm Beach teacher this morning for a one-on-one after she reached out to me from my last webinar. So I'm actually very excited to connect with you. So feel free to send me an email if you have any questions. I'm at avrith@adobe.com. I work at Adobe as their education evangelist. And I'm also a South Florida native. I live in Palm Beach County. So this doing these webinars with you is really special for me because you are my community, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to connect with you and to be able to give back in any small way that I'm able to, because I know how hard you are working for our kids. So you can also connect with me on Twitter at Tanya Avrith. So please feel free to connect whenever you want. So as Tasha mentioned, today I'm going to be looking at designing digital instruction in a remote classroom. And one of the strategies that I'm going to be looking at is something called a Hyperdoc. The agenda for this session is I'm going to explore Hyperdocs through the lens of instructional design, looking at it through understanding by design, which is a framework for instructional design that was created by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTeague. And we're going to then look at how that applies to digital lesson design. We're going to kind of look at the difference between the two. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it all together with the tools. So we're going to look at the thinking amplifiers. That's what we call them. They help students make their thinking visible. And then we'll have some time for a Q&A. So as you're watching, and I know there's a 20-second delay, but I'd love for you to think about this question and feel free to kind of share some of your thinking inside the chat. But the question is, what strategies and practical applications can we use to help support student voice and help students make their thinking visible in a remote classroom? And this is really the guiding question for today's session as well. And we're really trying to figure out how we can better support our learners in our classes. And this is a strategy that is not just fantastic for remote learning, but it's also a great tool to use when you go back to your classrooms and you're now thinking about how you can better support your students using technology as a tool for learning. We also call this blended learning, so that some of the learning can be happening digitally and some of the learning, is face-to-face. And so it's a really great way to be able to combine technology and really solid pedagogical practice. So I always go back to this this effective technology integration framework. So I am the co-author of the Google Infused Classroom with my best friend and partner in crime, Holly Clark, who, by the way, we're going to be doing a show next week on the Google Infused Classroom. So I hope that you'll join. But when we wrote the book, what we noticed is that over the years, we realized what really makes technology integration effective? What are the things that we want to be seeing in our classes when we know that the technology that we're using is really actually having an impact on student learning and ultimately having students grow as learners? And so one of the three things that we came up with are basically these. One, it helps your students make their thinking visible, meaning you're able to gather rich information about where they are in their learning journey and really understand that where they are by having them articulate and explain their thinking in ways that are meaningful for them. Because not every learner obviously learns the same. So sometimes kids might need opportunities to talk through their thinking, make a video, be able to explain a drawing that they've created, or even if it's just a worksheet, be able to go deeper and explain their thinking and be able to talk through their understanding. So we've noticed that the technology is a great tool to do that, even if it means that they're just taking a quick video or a screencast of something that they've created. So that's a really powerful way that we've often seen technology being used. The other is that it allows students to have a voice. This idea of student agency is not new, but providing students with the opportunity to talk, to be heard in your class is really powerful, right? Very often without technology, when you want to gather information as a quick, let's say, formative check, you'll ask the kids a question in the class, but very often it's the first two or three that are developmentally more ready, more mature, whose language, English is their first language, that might raise their hands. And so providing students with equitable access to technology and also through the ability to ask questions and slow things down through technology provides students with voice in your class. And then also choice, agency in terms of how they want to demonstrate their learning. Do they want to be, maybe some students are better at writing, but some students might be better at explaining their thought processes. And by providing students with that agency to talk through their understanding and have that voice is extremely powerful for their learning. And then finally, when we see technology being used effectively, it provides students with opportunities to share their work. And this is really powerful. And I don't mean just sharing their work with you, through a walled garden that you are only able to see. But I also mean allowing students to share their work with each other, allowing students to learn from each other, to be able to question and provide feedback and learn how to provide feedback so that they can improve their skills. So this is really powerful, and technology that when used effectively, often you'll see these three things that will happen. So what we're going to look at right now are some of the tools and also the strategies that we're going to use to pull them together. And so some of the tools that you might be familiar with, and we'll keep it super simple. So Google Slides, Google Docs, and another tool that I happen to love is called Screencastify, and that's a great tool. It's a Chrome extension that's free that you can put on your Chromebook or on your Chrome operating system, your web browser, and it allows you to take a screencast of your screen. So these are 3 tools that I'm going to explore today. So the big question, what is a hyperdoc? Okay, that's like, what is the hype, right? What is this thing? So what is a hyperdoc? A hyperdoc is a transformative, interactive, personalized, engaging, like it's a document that allows you to rethink your instruction. So what it is not is a substitution or a digital version of a worksheet. It's not where you're just taking what you would do in a very static worksheet and asking questions in a doc. It's really meant to be designed using backwards design planning, thinking about your, objectives and what you're trying to get from your learners, and scaffolding the experience for them in one place so that everything is connected, and it allows your students to have opportunities to really work through the information and grow, and for you to check for understanding throughout the way. And I'm going to show you an example in a moment. So it's not meant to be a one-size-fits-all doc. It's not meant to be another way to just disseminate information. It's really meant to be thoughtful and carefully designed. So when we think about why Hyperdocs, it really allows you to build out your unit or your lesson in advance, or your lessons. It lets you kind of structure those in a place where everything is connected. I often will see people using a Google Classroom, and they'll have all of their different instructions and then all of the different components of it as attachments. And that's extremely confusing for kids when they're trying to kind of scaffold the experience of what you're trying to do in the lesson. When everything is scattered, it can be extremely confusing in terms of the way that you're thinking about the design. It also has the components of good lesson design built in. And this is key. This is everything, because when we're developing effective instructional design for good lesson design, and I know this is something that we use at Palm Beach County. I've been told that you might already be using this idea of like engage, explore, explain, apply, reflect, share, extend. So as you're designing, you're thinking about backwards planning the experience of the lesson and having all the components dialed in inside the doc. It encourages students to be much more independent because they can work at their own pace, move faster, move slower. It allows you to engage the students through creative packaging of the lesson. I've seen people create hyperdocs using slides, and they can add more dynamic elements to that. You can add videos, you can add tutorials, you can add key hook questions and an image. So it has much more multimedia attached to that as you're having them go through it. It also is flexible because you can use multiple different types of design templates. The teacher can be freed up at that point. So if you're using, if you have the ability to have breakout rooms during remote learning, or if you're in face-to-face classrooms, it allows you to have kids working and then be able to work with different learners based on their needs. It allows you to integrate a variety of digital media. As I mentioned, students can work at their own pace. And this is important because obviously all of our learners are not the same, and they work in, you have to meet them where they are. It allows you the opportunity to differentiate and give student choice because everything is packaged in one place. You can add components of choice and how students might demonstrate their learning and embed those pieces inside the document. And it allows you to flip your instruction. And I'm going to talk about that later, but you can embed video content in there and basically clone yourself in small chunks where needed so that you're guiding your students, your learners through the process of the experience of their lesson. So what I'm going to do is really let you think about it through the lens of how you can personalize this experience of learning for your learners. And this is key because right now it seems really complex and complicated. You know, the whole idea of like, how am I going to reach all these kids that are not even in front of me and that already have all these different needs? This is a really great solution to be able to think about the design of your instruction so that you can personalize that experience. Now, I know that this is going to be like drinking from a fire hose right now for some of you. And I want to be able to support you. So when you go back and check out these lessons, please make sure that you access this slide deck. And on the bottom of some of my slides, I've provided links that will take you to some resources. And so my dear friend, Kristen Magaletti, who's also a Palm Beach teacher, she created this for her colleagues at her school to help them learn how to use Hyperdocs. And it's a Hyperdoc that was created to teach you how to create a Hyperdoc. It's very meta. So you could go in there and go through it, and it'll teach you all the things, all the smaller technical components that you will need as you're going through this this lesson. So let me go back out. Okay, so let's kind of dive in a little bit. So this might look familiar to you. This is a traditional lesson plan, right? And this is what I mean by understanding by design. When we're thinking about backwards planning, we're thinking about the end in mind, right? You have to be thinking about your objectives, the skills, all the different elements that we want to understand from our learners. And when we're planning, we want to plan that backwards so that there's a scaffolding that happens so that we're making sure that we hit the objectives and the outcomes that we want to see our learners have. This is, curriculum design 101, but very often there's a disconnect between the plan and then what's executed in a way that helps students really learn more effectively so that you can scaffold their learning. And so, as you can see, like, you have student objectives, performance tasks, you have the learning plan, there's resources, you're thinking about the way you're differentiating. So this is the back end. And now this is the front end. So the front end of the traditional lesson plan is essentially how I've designed it here with the student experience of a Hyperdoc. So I still have my learning objective that's very clear and concise, and available for my learners. I have, what I'm looking for. So my objectives written in language that makes sense for my learners. I don't just specify a bunch of standards that make no sense for the kids. It's really important that they're able to articulate their learning and understand what their goal for this assignment is in language that makes sense to them. And sometimes I have more inquiry. I'll have kids co-create some of those assessment criteria together, because we can, as if I have strong planning, there's definitely the opportunity for kids to be able to have a say in that. But it's very, very well designed in the sense that, like, I know that I'm building skills and understanding of content, and I'm able to do that through this process. So this is, and then I have my single point rubric over here, so kids can see like what the assessment criteria looks like based on the standards. So I'm really looking at it through the lens of the pedagogy, right? I have opportunities for formative assessments that are completely connected and intertwined into the design of this instruction. I have differentiated instruction, and I'm going to show you how I design in a way that is universal. It's called Universal Design for Learning, UDL. And I think about the different modalities and the possibility for different learners as I'm designing the instruction. And I'll show you what that looks like. I allow, and I have opportunities for then students to demonstrate their learning, because they're going to explore text, they're going to engage, there's learning and it's scaffolded. And then at some point I get them to create, to show what they know. And then I have opportunities for built in for reflection. And I explicitly teach my students how to reflect And I get them to understand the power of curating their learning and pulling pieces of artifacts of their learning in. And so this is all, as I'm going to show you, embedded in this Hyperdoc. So let's kind of break this down. I call this the anatomy of a Hyperdoc. So we're going to start off with the first part, and I'm going to walk you through this. So engage. So as my students are coming in, I have them watch this video. And I don't even explain the video. I want them to just watch it. And when I do this in face-to-face, I have the kids turn on, I turn on closed captioning. And again, I'm always thinking about all my learners. So I pull that up. We watched it together as a group, but we didn't say anything. We don't talk about it yet because I want them to just process. And by the way, if you have not watched Alan Watts' What Do You Desire, it is really timely right now. I highly recommend that you have a look. So the way that I've built out this Hyperdoc, and this is a great thing that you can do when you're when you're building out your Hyperdocs as well. And a lot of people don't know this, but what I've done is I've actually pulled the text from this video, and Alan Watts is a famous philosopher, so I was able to find it and Google it and find all the actual text from this poem, or like this, whatever it is. And I have them then go in and explore the text. I have them do more closed reading. Keep in mind, this is a high school class, but this is very relevant for any grade level when you're having kids watch something, to be able to make more deeper understanding of what they've watched and a better comprehension to really make more meaning through the text that they're engaged in. So what I did is I had created it so that in the doc, you can force a copy. Okay, so what you do is at the end of your URL, any URL, go on and try this out yourself. But if you take out, you literally hack it, I swear. You just take out edit and you remove the word edit and you write in yourself copy. And when you press enter, what will happen is this will pop up and it'll say copy document. And that link, when you embed it and put it as a link inside the document, it will force your students automatically to forced copy. They create a copy automatically so that they can have a better, so that they're working on it on their own. So this is a great trick to get them to just make more sense of what they're reading. And then what I did is I had them go inside the doc, and I had them highlight parts that stood out to them. Again, like this is just an activity that I did, but it was really meaningful. This took this whole first engage part was a whole lesson. And so they highlighted the parts. And then what I had them do was I had them pull out their favorite part and of the, from this text. And what they did is they used a Padlet, and they copied and pasted their favorite part inside the Padlet. And if you don't have, like, Padlet has 3 for free, but you can do this with a Google slide deck as well. Like, they can have their own slide and you can make it collaborative. I'm going to show that later. There's ways around this if like those tools feel out of reach. I mean, you can even set up a table in a shared doc and have each student go in and add their favorite part. I mean, this is just a way for them to make their thinking visible. And so this was great. At this point, that's when we started having a conversation about the text, because they really made meaning and they had a better understanding, and they all had opinions and thoughts around it. It was really rich conversation. And that was at the end of the very first class. The next thing I had them do in the next day was then explore. And by the way, I'm showing you one example, but this could be applied for any single lesson that you do in any subject area. Okay, so having kids engage and then explore to make better meaning of what you're learning about is really powerful. And so in this case, I had kids pull multimedia text, different modalities of content. So in this case, these are videos that they watch. And then I pulled up a text set from Common Lit on the topic, and I had them explore further. And so what's really great about this is when we talk about differentiating instruction, I teach my students in my class how to change. If you're using YouTube, you can choose where this little gear is. And when you click on the gear right over here, you can go in and you can actually change the subtitles based on the language that you want. And so I had a huge population of English language learners, and I had them go in and they would choose the language that made sense for them, so that they could make sense of what they were watching. And this is really a great way to reach different learners. And so I had them do that. And I would also do that when I would create my own videos. And I'll talk about that later, but I would create all of my videos, these short little tutorials. This is actually one of mine. And I would upload them onto my YouTube channel, and I would embed them in my Hyperdocs. So that way my students could then, if they needed further instruction, I could kind of flip and kind of clone myself. And I don't recommend that you do long videos. You lose just the way that you wouldn't talk at a kid for, 15, 20 minutes straight. I chunk all of my videos in like 3-minute increments, and then I have them go and do something. I don't recommend you do a whole 12 or 15-minute lecture. It's the same thing as it's not great practice to do that. You're better off chunking it within the activity, and then having them go off and do what you want them to do. So I would have them do that. I would have them watch the videos, and then they would be able to change the closed captioning. And then what I had them do is I was using something else, but you can do this in a Google slide. This was a check for understanding, right? I really wanted to see at that point, again, it's a formative assessment. So what thinking do these videos and readings inspire in you? And I have them, and this is a great strategy, because you don't want to be looking at, 20 Google Docs every time you have kids do any kind of quick formative assessment. So I use slides a lot in a collaborative way, where I have one slide deck and I have the kids be assigned like one slide each. And, it's a little chaotic when they first start, but then they get used to it. And we talk about digital citizenship and the importance, obviously, of not, working on someone else's slide. But they go in and they each choose a slide, and they are able to add their understanding, their thinking, and I can look at it, and they can look at each other's work as well, and feel inspired. But also it helps me check quickly to see like if they're on track and their understanding. Now we go to explain. And at this point, this is now like lesson 3. So this is like more of a unit, right? This is like an activity, a project. They're learning through the project. And at this point, this is like later, but I haven't even spoken it, because the whole thing with what I'm having them do is I'm having them create a manifesto, but I don't even talk about a manifesto until like the 3rd or 4th lesson. So you have to understand, like, that's not like the manifesto is part of the process, but I'm getting them, I want them to feel inspired about what the manifesto really, the essence of the manifesto, right? And so at this point, this is when we start looking at the elements of a manifesto. And so they go in, now they're reading some text, and I have them read through the samples and the posts here. And then I use something called an answer garden, which is a free tool that lets you create like almost like a word wall, like a word, like, when the words get bigger, like the more the same one shows up. It's really cool. And so like they can only use 20 or 40 characters. So it really forces them to synthesize the main points and pull them in. And then the more that you start like kind of pulling in the main points that you've learned about, the bigger the words start to get. So you start seeing themes. So that was really good to like have a conversation about like what the elements of the manifesto were. Then at this point, we got into the apply stage, and this is where like I have kids start to demonstrate their learning, because now they've engaged, they've explored, they've learned about the strategies. They, I've keep in mind that by the time I've gotten to this lesson, I had already taught them about design principles, because this is more of a summative assessment. So a lot of what I'm grading, because of the class I had taught, which was personal branding and digital communication. But again, like I know this is for that content, this could have been applied for any subject area. Okay, it's just the design. But at this point, I had taught them the skills. And so I was having them learn about the manifesto. They'd learned about design principles, which is part of the assessment that I was looking at. And now I get them to go out and they create their manifestos. And so we look at good manifestos, we look at bad ones, we had examined exemplars, we had opened up the rubric, we had looked at old examples, we had graded other ones together as a group to say like what worked with it, what didn't, how could they have been improved, what could they have done better based on what we were learning. And now they're ready to go off and they are going to create. And so I have the kids create, and then I have them turn them in. And in this case, I use a Padlet. They could turn it in on a Google Classroom. They can turn in their work in any way you want. I just happen to like the kids being able to look and share their thinking together. Because they get inspired when they are able to see each other's work, and their work is important to be seen. There's something like kids want their work to be seen. They want to be able to show it off. They'll definitely do a lot more when they know that it's not just for a grade, but there's actual like a purpose and it's going to be viewed. And so this was really cool, because what would happen is like I had 6 periods, and by period 2, which was like my 3rd period, because I have period 0, my kids in like period 0 and period 1 would be like messaging me like, Miss Avrith, can you take it down? They would want to resubmit because they were starting to realize like they could do better. They were getting inspired by each other's work. And I think that that's really powerful. They knew that it wasn't just going to be put in for me, like other people were going to see it. They definitely want to do better work when they know it's going to be viewed. So this essentially was like, this is a high level Hyperdoc. I don't want you to feel like, every single Hyperdoc has to be like designed in this way, but this is just to kind of break down like the pieces, right? And then I have them share. You can have pieces of extension attached to them. And so like, I don't expect you to go off today and like just poof, like create these Hyperdocs. I've been doing this for a while. I didn't come up with the concept of Hyperdocs. It was actually 3 of my very good friends. Their names are Lisa Highfill, Kelly Hilton, and oh my gosh, Sarah Landis. So of course I don't forget them. They live in California, and they work at Pleasanton School District out in California. And they actually wrote this book called the Hyperdoc Handbook, and you can find it on Amazon. And they have such an amazing community. Like their community is beautiful. And I'm super excited to like share their community, because they're all about giving. It's all about like helping each other and giving. And so they have this really great Facebook group that you can join, and it's wonderful. They do webinars, and you can see like they do look how many webinars they like. If you go in, you'll get so many resources, and like teachers, like I don't know if you can see, but I think there's over 20,000 people on this community. Yeah, 23,500 members. And like people are so giving of themselves, and you can ask questions, and like you can share, ask for resources, and people are really, really great about how they share. So you can go on there and check that out. They also are on Twitter, and they have a website called hyperdocs.co, and they've updated it. It looks so good. And so you can go in, and they have, templates. So here's templates that you can go in and explore the templates, and like they have such great stuff. And so all of that, those pieces are available for you. The other thing that's really great is they've curated at their school district some examples for their teachers. And I went on, and I have permission. And so if you're just getting started, you can go in here, and there's some samples that you can get started with. And you can go in and kind of check them out. And these are for secondary teachers, just to kind of get a sense of like what those look like. And then they also have them for elementary teachers. So a whole bunch that they've curated, some of the best ones that they had found. So you can go in and like explore and see what that's about and feel inspired. And they have all different kinds here. They're great. So let's just go back here. What I want to share, and I'm going to share this pretty quickly, is just some strategies with the tools that I use. So I mentioned the idea of like setting up a collaboration through slides. And I strongly urge that you explore this idea. I did this lesson with, these were 7th and 8th graders. And it was actually, this is such a wild lesson. It was a digital citizenship lesson that I created. And it was actually on like sexting, because like that's a reality for kids. And I had to find a way to like teach these kids about the importance of making good choices online. And so what I did is I created these scenarios, and this is such a great remote learning activity that you could do in like for social studies, for like any kind of subject area. And so what I did is I created color-coded, like this is like the lesson. So, and by the way, it's all in here. So you can actually go in and see it and access it. But like I had all the different groups color-coded. So they all knew, like some of the kids were yellow, and they worked collaboratively. And I gave them character cards, and you can go and see it in the lesson plan. And they had like a scenario, and what they had to do was answer like possible choices and consequences as a group. And it was great because I was able to see all their responses, and it was all embedded in one place, and it was super structured and organized. It worked really well because it was really well thought out. But this is a great thing you can set up with slides as well to get kids collaborating and create like more dynamic projects. Another little tool that I love, and this could come in handy, especially during this time of remote learning, it's called Talk and Comment. And it's a free Chrome extension that you can put, or your students can put. And what it allows your students to do, by the way, the link is right here, is it lets you or your students add voice notes on your docs and your slides. So this is great as an accommodation for learners who perhaps like want to be able to articulate more, don't want to make a video of it, but just really want to explain what they were trying to do, or for you to give feedback in a quicker way than writing it all out for every learner. So this is a great little tool, super handy, free Chrome extension. The last thing that I want to make sure that I share with you is Screencastify. And I mentioned it several times in this webinar. It's a free Chrome extension that you can essentially record your screen. You can embed a webcam if you want. And it lets you download it in several different ways. One, you can download it, you can export it. What's really cool is you can create animated GIFs, and you've probably seen some of them. These are great when you're teaching in a remote classroom, so you don't have to flip through all your instruction to show something. It will play over and over and over again. But it also lets you publish to YouTube and share straight to Classroom. So often what I'll do is, you can share to Classroom for sure, but I like to publish them. It's one extra step, but then it allows me to have them curated. I can use them again and again and again. And it works with closed captioning. So I can turn the closed captioning on for accommodations for my students. Yeah, so that's the whole idea of the GIFs. That's what I was showing you. So like I have used them for instruction, but this is also great for kids to be able to make their thinking visible when they're creating projects. So like this could be one of the things, like in a Hyperdoc, when you say apply, well, maybe the kids are working on something and then you get them to make a screencast of what they're working on to talk through their thinking, even if it's a Google slide deck, but have them walk through an understanding of what they've been doing and articulate and reflect on their learning. And that could be part of the assessment that you're having them do. It's really powerful to be able to gain better insight of their learning, especially considering you're not with them all the time. So having the kids create with Screencastify is really powerful on a when you do it regularly, they get used to it and it's not such a big deal anymore. So that is actually it for me today. I know it was a lot. It's like I told you it was going to be like drinking through a fire hose. The nice thing is this has been recorded and you can watch it again and again. And I've left you with really great, valuable resources that you can go back in and check again and check again. And I am available if you have any questions. I want you to feel free to reach out to me. Again, you can reach me at Tanya Avrith at avrith@adobe.com. You can also, if you, I'm not trying to push the book, but like there is the Google Infused Classroom that kind of breaks down all these ideas and strategies of how to design effective instruction that could be really handy. It's available on Kindle as well, so you don't have to feel like you have to wait for it. But if that's not an option, please just reach out to me. I'm just so happy to help. And I want to thank all of you guys because honestly, like you are doing amazing. I know this is super stressful and we're in a few weeks, but think about the long term. Like it's pushing you in ways that you never imagined. You're learning things in ways you never imagined, and you're going to be so much better for it later. So thank you for the amazing work you do with our children every single day.
I was on mute. Tanya, thank you so much. We are so just grateful to have this partnership with you, to help us get your thinking, to understand your thinking behind the intentional design of Hyperdocs. I just wanted to show everyone where the information will be. I know there was a couple of questions about the slides. This is our EdTech training website, and we will have a page built out for this presentation, and it'll be under the live stream resources. We have, for every webinar that we do, we're trying to build that page. So very shortly, we will have all of the wonderful resources that she shared with us on our website. Before I go, I just want to show you a couple of things to talk to you about what's coming up. First, before I do that, directly after this webinar, we are having a Twitter chat. And you could join us on Twitter using the hashtag PBC Trailblazer Chat. We're looking forward to hearing from you. We're going to be talking about some best practices for remote learning. So after we're done, if you have some time, just kind of hop on over to Twitter and join us for our Twitter chat. Tomorrow, or Friday, on Friday, we will have a couple of webinars, some more guest speakers. We have a panel of 3 teachers who will be joining us, elementary, middle, and high, and they'll be talking about just how everything has been going for the remote learning. We're looking forward to our panel. And then in the afternoon, we're going to have Rebecca and John. They're going to talk to us about the top 10 Chrome extensions. Explain what an extension is and some really key extensions that would be beneficial for you. So you don't want to miss that one. And then on Monday, John is he's like our Google Sites guru, and he's going to be talking to us about Google Sites and how you can create a site on your own, and anything from, information to student digital portfolios. There's just so much that you can do with a Google site. And then in the afternoon, we'll have team talking about SEL signature practices, social and emotional learning practices. So with that in mind, I just want to remind you that we do have lots of people manning our help form. So if you need any help at all, please fill out our bit.ly. It's help form EdTech, and it is case sensitive. We have a lot of us who are here just wanting to help you. Again, thank Tanya so much for joining. We're just super excited. And as she mentioned, she threw a lot of information out there, but it is recorded, so you can go back and get it in digestible bites and to be able to incorporate some of those things into your teaching practice. Thank you, guys. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and join us on our Twitter chat.